today's program, we're going to be trying to unleash your internal drive with the author of the new book, Unleash Your Internal Drive, Bill Yeager. Bill, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Phil. I appreciate it.
Well, Bill, for the benefit of the people listening who may not be familiar with your background, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, how much time do we have, Phil? I can give you the short version.
let's get the short version. Yeah,
I'm a talker, man, for sure. So, going back to my background, rewinding to how I got into the fitness world and now being a motivational speaker. I grew up with a rough childhood, to keep it very lightly. There was a lot of trauma that was in my life for extended periods of time. And I went to food for comfort. I became overweight and obese, and I was an athlete as a kid, but I was always like chunky or fat. And I went on. I didn't go to the typical 4-year college. I went to a 2-year school, and I dove right into adulthood. I left at 18 as soon as I possibly could, right after high school. Left that environment, and as I was trying to grow, as I was trying to move on with my life, I found that I just kept eating all the time, eating for comfort, and eventually it turned into alcohol. And having an athletic background, a little bit of a fitness background from playing sports, I was interested in, back then we had magazines. I don't know if we still have them now, but there was this Muscle Media magazine that the owner of EAS used to help to contribute to the users of his supplements. He had this great idea of having this fitness contest, and he was giving away his red Lamborghini and a ton of other prizes. And the whole idea was transformation. He was like, look, I know you guys can do this. I know you just need a little bit of that nudge. This is what I'm doing to inspire you. And I saw that, and I was like, wow, man, like that would be so cool. Like, here I am, this like 21-year-old kid, and I'm for it. So I kind of got the juice flowing, and I started, and in probably about 8 weeks or so, I saw my abs for the first time, and then I quit. Not too many people know this part of the story, but it's cool. I'm very open about it now. I stopped. The first time I went for my transformation, I quit, man. Like I thought like, cool, this is it. And I quit because I didn't take a healthy approach. I took more like a eat salad and run approach, and I looked sick and stuff and super skinny, and gained all the weight back. And then fast forward maybe like another 8 months or so, I was cleaning out my garage, and they had this really motivational VHS. And I was cleaning out my garage, and I'm reaching up, and the thing came down, and it whacked me on the head. And I'm like, man, like, okay, so I'm a little irritated. I'm hungry, and I'm reaching out, and I'm about to throw this thing out, and I'm looking at these before and after pictures. I still have the VHS behind me. It's funny. I'm reaching out, and I'm like, oh man, like, how cool would it be? Like, is this stuff for real? I'm like, no, not me. So I'm like, I need a break. So I got like this big Subway grinder and big bowl of potato chips, and I'm watching the thing. And about halfway through, like, I started crying, and like people's transformations were like incredible, and the life changes were awesome, like super awesome. And I'm like, eventually I got to the point, I'm like, wow, man, like if these people can do it, there isn't a reason in the world why I can't. So it was that day that I made my initial a decision to follow 12 weeks of eating right and exercising, and I was committed to winning this thing. And fast forward to 12 weeks later, did everything right, and I completely transformed my body. My brain was catching up. My internal transformation was catching up, and later on that year, I got a call from the judges, and they're like, hey man, like, we want to interview you for this thing. There was 600,000 entries this year, but we really narrowed it down, and I think you made some amazing transformations. So I started talking about how my life had changed after another several months, and it was awesome. It was just like a whole world was changing around me. It was like somebody put me in a different movie. And I became so inspired to give that same gift to other people. So shortly afterward, I found out that I won. I'm like, I'm taking this money and I'm starting a personal training business. And I'm like, man, I just want to give that gift to people. Like, how do I let me duplicate what happened to me for others? So the background turned into, you know, me being an auto mechanic, and then a fitness, a painting contractor, to now a personal trainer. And for the last 20 years, although there's been a lot of evolution along the way, I'm still known as that personal trainer. But I really moved into, and the fascinating thing about the book, and to answer your question, you know, what became so fascinating to me was the difference in people. You know, like as a trainer, I didn't want to leave anybody behind. And I know a lot of trainers feel this way, but you don't really have the answers when somebody doesn't follow through. It's either you're just going to have people that follow through with what they ask you to do, and some don't. And I became fascinated. Like, I got to help these people. I'm looking in the mirror and saying, no, I can't let these guys behind. So the whole point of the book was a culmination of all the techniques that I learned by interviewing other people who have been able to transform, and reflecting on my own.
Well, there's that old cliche that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. But how do you get the sprinters, in this case, those who want to transform themselves but don't really have the wherewithal to put in the long-term commitment?
Well, you know, that's a really good question. So there's so many reasons why. You know, like somebody's background, I like to look into somebody's background and see this. People are stuck for a reason, you know, and they get to this like pressure cooker type of situation where, you know, they want to become a sprinter. And, you know, they go like, boom, like they're like, look, I'm going to follow this, and I'm going to sprint to the, you know, the 12-week line. And then boom, you know, then it's over. And to answer your question, that discussion happens like right on day one, because there's some conditioning in that mindset that we want to be able to change. Because I love the sprinters. You know, every trainer loves a sprinter, because you're like, you get to be the hero, right? You get to be the guy on stage to say, oh yeah, I got a sprinter here. They're doing everything I want. Yeah, but what about the follow through? You know, the biggest thing is do not let them stop. And to really get into somebody's brain, obviously it takes conditioning, but to allow them to realize that, you know, whenever I talk to people about this right off the rip, it's to help them understand that, you know, they got there through patterns. You know, it was patterns of action that were the repetition. And in 12 weeks, some people can just keep it going from there. They can just keep a lifestyle out of it. But going into it with the perception that there's going to be an end, that's where I want to put the brakes onto that and be like, whoa, we don't want to put an end to this, because, you know, you put an end to it before, and what happened? You know, now you're here. So a lot of conditioning along the way.
If you're just joining the broadcast, we're speaking with Bill Yeager, who is the author of the new book, Unleash Your Internal Drive. He also runs Horizon Personal Training and Nutrition in Cheshire, Connecticut. And if you're in Cheshire going down Route 10, you can't miss it. This is the place with a giant tire outside. This looked like it comes from a giant's truck. I mean, what's the story with the tire, and can you actually lift that thing?
You know, those are a heck of a lot lighter than you look, but some can, some can't. It can be personally, yes, obviously with the right technique. And it's funny, I was always kind of like against the grit and the grind type of training, you know. And as the culture changed and I became more and more open to it, you know, the funny thing is I never bought one of those tires. All the tires that are out there were by donation, because I had some local fellas from the farm who were like, look, it costs us money to get rid of these things. Do you want them? And I'm looking at my team and I'm like, well, do we want these things? Like, if you guys are going to use them. So yeah, people really get into it. I think you really want to get a good solid foundation of training before you attack those, but they could be fun.
You mentioned that the start of your personal journey, there was a misuse of food as well as alcohol. How do you motivate people to eat properly? It's very difficult today. It often seems that it's too easy to order out, and of course, with the pandemic sort of going away. More people want to go out and go out to their favorite eateries. So what is your secret to getting people on the right track nutritionally?
Yeah, that's, awesome question. So it's interesting. The label of being a motivational speaker, I almost dislike, because it's cool to say, oh, I'm a motivational speaker, but I'm more of the why guy, because I can't motivate people, and that's, on one hand you can say, yeah, you can kind of motivate me. I feel really good after talking to you. Well, I inspired you. I inspired you to take some kind of action. But motivation, to me, like real motivation, if you're motivated, it has to come from within. So I'm more like the why guy. I want to find out why, the emotional reasons why somebody really wants to have what they want, whatever that is. It started out in fitness, and I believe very much in eating right and exercise, but I help people with all areas of their life, because all of these strategies are the same. Yeah, we want to take care of the temple first. So then you're coming forth with those challenges in the best way that you possibly can. But I don't motivate people, and it may be a silly thing to say from a motivational speaker, but I want to find out the goods. I want to talk to somebody and get so deep. If I have somebody emotional who's in most cases showing some strong emotion in our first conversation, then I know that we can tap into their true potential by finding the reasons why. And usually the more powerful, all the time, the more powerful emotions you have that you attach to that goal that you have, then you're gonna follow through. And people won't need that in external motivation. They might need the conditioning, they might need the reminders, they might need the accountability, which I am a huge advocate for. I've got another business, Bill Yeager's Transformations, is all about the accountability, giving people the tools. But I want to know why. I want to know why. And it's not just, it's got to be specific. It's got to be clear, and it's gotta invoke emotion, and it could be a happy emotion, an excited emotion, but more often it's more of an avoidance of pain type of emotion.
How do you help your clients discover the right physique for them? Not everybody wants to look like John Cena. Not everybody can, I imagine, look like John Cena. So how do you work with people to determine what is the most realistic and the healthiest physique goal for them?
Oh man, I love that question, and the John Cena. I want to ask a question back, almost like, where did that one come from? He's my man. I kind of look like John Cena. I've been told. It's like the facial structure here. I got pictures of him in my fitness room behind me over here. But to answer your question, especially these days, with the social media and the representation of what one looks like, and there's so much Photoshop going on, like we don't even know what's real anymore, So for me, when I'm a big advocate for visualization, huge advocate for so many reasons. But oftentimes people have this unrealistic idea of what they can look like. Now, don't get me wrong, anybody in any age I've seen can have six-pack abs, but is that really what people want? Like ultimately, when you really get down to what somebody wants, is it really the six-pack ab, or is it the love that you think is going to be attached to those six-pack abs? Do you think that you're going to be loved because you have six-pack abs? And then, dialing into the needs of an individual, then you can kind of get them to think a little bit more realistic for them. Like you can't have a guy like Michael, like I couldn't have Michael Jordan's physique, I'm too short. John Cena, well, maybe if there was some enhancements that were taken, if that were something I would be willing to do, which I certainly wouldn't, I might look more like him. But I think you catch my drift with that. People have to be very, very careful with what's out there, what's real, and what is realistic.
It's actually funny that you're saying that, because I have seen photos of you where you don't even have 6-pack abs. Looks like you have 12-pack abs. I mean,
Man.
if I bounce a quarter off of those, I'd get 2 dimes and a nickel back. It was
It certainly it comes in waves, and I'm very, very careful. I've got 6 now, not 12. The bottom half, you could probably use a little work, maybe about 5 pounds or so. But you know, everybody, it comes down to the reasons. Honestly, like, it comes down to the reasons, you know, and that's why I've been acceptable with, you know, I don't have the same physique. I'm very open about this. I don't have the same physique I had 20 years ago when I worked out and won that competition. That was, man, I was 6.5% body fat. I'm 43 now. My lifestyle is completely different. I do have a 6-pack now. It's not as chiseled as it was before, but it comes down to that piece about mental health. You know, back then, one of my motivating factors was a little unhealthy, you know, because I thought it would give me love. It was the one thing that I've been deprived of for years and years and years. And I thought if I looked a certain way, I would be loved. That was a very driving factor for me back then.
If you're just joining our broadcast, that means you've missed the first 2/3 of the broadcast, but don't worry. This episode is archived online at nutmegchatter.com. So just go over there. You'll find this episode. Also, the 200 plus episodes that we've done prior to this one are all online, featuring myself, my co-host Rich Sear, who will be on next week's show in the hosting chair, and the founder of the show, J. Timothy Quirk. So nutmegchatter.com, you'd be very surprised what you might find there. We've had some rather fabulous guests along the years. Recently, I spoke with Arlo Guthrie, the folk singing legend, Cousin Brucey, of course, radio legend. Someone I think that our guest Bill Yeager might know or may have heard of. Robert Cheek was on a couple of weeks ago. He's a vegan bodybuilding champion, and he has a new book out called The Plant-Based Athlete. And you're sort of muscling in on his territory now with Unleash Your Internal Drive, the new book that you've published. And Bill Yeager, you mentioned something, 2 words that really popped up a lot during the recent Tokyo Olympics, and that's mental health. And I think this is interesting because you're one of the first fitness and wellness professionals that I've interviewed mentions mental health as well as physical health.
Yeah, I was actually interviewed by one of the newscasters locally. I'm sorry, I've got so much information going in and out of my head. I don't recall which one. I think it was Channel 6. Sorry. My apologies to my wonderful interviewer, but yeah, you know, I'm going that route because I've seen even prior to COVID and the shutdowns, I was seeing how there's so much anxiety and depression out there, so much. And the more people that I talk to, and you know, before I even begin working with any client, and this is I've done this for 20 years now. I really want to get into what matters most to them. And when people open up, Phil, it's all the time. It's all the time that I'm probably at least 9 out of 10. I want to say 99 out of 100 clients. They come in and they're suffering inside, you know. And now more than ever. And I'm so grateful that this book is coming out to empower people, and that I've got a team of people that are helping me hold others accountable, because they get stuck. They get stuck because when you're in emotion, I think Einstein has a quote about this. When you're feeling an emotion, your brain starts, it doesn't work as efficient. And I'm talking like in a negative emotion, a disempowering emotion, you know. So you get this real challenge, and you're like, oh, you know, I can't believe this is happening to me. And, you know, how do I get myself out of it? Phil, it even happens to me, and I wrote the book. You know what my go-to is? I go to my team who know the book so darn well, or I open up the book to myself and I'm like, what? Why is this happening? You know? So I'm so grateful to really be launching this book at this point, because that's a huge focus of mine. A lot of people see me as the personal trainer or the motivator, and I'm really moving into the mental health piece of it, because I'm very passionate about it. One, because of the anxiety and depression I used to have, and And, you know, people have different levels, but I was at a medicated level. And I'm fortunate enough to have found a way to flip that on itself and have been able to do a 180. You know, I used to be a pessimist, you know, now I'm an optimist. And I only say that because I want to help somebody who's listening who might be going through this, to let them know that there are strategies and there is help. In addition to that, my mother, I don't talk about this much, and excuse me if I get a little emotional, I'm an emotional guy, but my mother suffers with a mental illness. And that's one of my motivating factors too, because I believe, I am getting choked up, I believe that if she had different resources when she was struggling the most, she wouldn't have gotten so far deep, you know. And Phil, man, I may be wrong. I'm not a doctor, but I know the stages that my mom went through, and I believe that if somebody came to help her, or she sought help herself, then it would have been different. So that's really, I'm so glad that you brought that up, man, because I think that's a really, it's I'm glad that we're getting more awareness and resources out there for people who are struggling.
Is it ever too late for anybody to get started, to move towards the better state of mind and state of body that you're advocating? I know from my own personal experience, I'm 56, and I'm afraid if I go to the beach, some guys from Greenpeace will come and try to roll me into the ocean. So is there help for somebody who's sort of middle-aged plus like me?
There always is. There always is. There's never a time, as long as you can eat and move, you can always increase your cardio output, the ability that you have to think clearer, your mental health. You know, the thing is, so often people just measure their health based off of the way that they look, you know, and their weight on a scale or their body fat percentage. And although I'm a huge advocate for measuring these things, but progress is made where it's measured too. You know, I was just on another podcast last week, and, you know, somebody asked me how do you increase your self-esteem? And it was the first time I ever said it, but I just said, I just launched out. I'm like, you got to win. I'm like, you got to just keep winning and winning and winning. And I'm like, and that just comes down to, you know, measuring how you're going to be successful. And that creates a momentum, you know, much like how I got into a depression. I was constantly on a negative, disempowering momentum. Well, you can flip that on itself and turn into a more positive momentum. And you can lose the weight if that's what you're looking to do and you want to look at like that stunt on a beach. But hey, to each their own. But as long as you can eat and you can move, then there's nothing stopping you from. The only thing that's stopping you is in here, you know, the beliefs that you have that's stopping you.
Well, what of course we're on radio. What Bill's doing, he's pointing to to his head. That's where it all is. So it's really just, it's a mind and body combination. It's not just going into the gym and lifting weights and then going home and eating a proper meal.
Yeah, totally.
Well, Bill Yeager, I mean, we're limited by the amount of time that we can devote to conversation like this, but if our listeners wanted to continue the conversation with you, how could they get in touch with you?
The best way is, man, you just look up on any social media platform, Bill Yeager's Transformations, then it's highly likely I'm going to be on the top of the list. Myself and my team, we're in every channel there is. I'm on YouTube and Facebook. I got a private group going, and we're on Twitter, and we're on all even TikTok. Man, they got me on that thing. I'm a goofball behind the scenes, so it gives me a chance to a nice little platform to do that. But also Bill Yeager's Transformations.com. You can reach me there. And or Bill at BillYeager's.transformations.com as well as an email. So I'm pretty easy to find, man. You just Google search me, and you'll catch me.
And as I said earlier, if you're in Cheshire, Connecticut on Route 10, just look for a huge tire outside of a place called Horizon Personal Training and Nutrition, and there's a good chance you'd be inside.
Yep. You got it, man.
So I should ask one more question. Unleash Your Internal Drive is obviously your new book. Do you have any more books coming up in the near future?
Oh man, I love that question. I love it. You know, this was such a journey. I absolutely love the question. So this was such a journey. It took me 16 years to put the content together. And when I decided, I turned 40 years old, and I was one of those hemming and hawing kind of people where I'm like, do I really want to write the book? And I'm just using it for clients, and it's had all these different versions and stuff. But I had a hard time when I hit 40, man. Like, I was just like, am I living the life that I want to be at? And one of the deciding factors was to write this book. And I looked long and hard for probably a good 3 to 5 months to find a publishing company. And I found one that I really fell in love with, and it turned into what I thought was going to be a short journey. It turned into a 3-year tour. So, and one of the reasons why, to answer your question, one of the reasons why is because I had this perception of what this book was going to be like. And while I was writing it, I said, like, this has to have everything. This has to be the most powerful book that I have the ability to write. So I kind of went back to the table about 2/3 of the way through. My publisher was a little upset. They're like, geez, you want to do all this stuff, all these changes? I'm like, yes. I'm like, I can't leave anything behind. So when people ask me, oh, what do you think about a next book? I'm like, oh man, I just finished my marathon. But what's funny about that, about continuing the journey, kind of stemming off your other question, I kind of relate it to Jack Canfield. And I think he wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, right? Was it Jack Canfield? So he's got like 50 different versions, right, of like chicken soup for, the personal trainer, and chicken soup for, the whatever kind of like whatever kind of place that they can put an individual, they've got a book, So I was thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll have an internal drive for the financial piece, following the fitness, and maybe I'll have, and I joke about this, maybe for the relationships, but Phil, I just had my 3rd divorce, so I don't know if the relationships piece, if I can nail that down, maybe I'll write a book on it for sure.
Well, if you do, Bill Yeager, we'll certainly have you back on this show, which is Nutmeg Chatter. And folks, thank you for listening to another episode of our program. Rich Sear will be back in the host's chair next week with his Claws Corner program, and I will be here 2 weeks from today. So until we meet again, have yourselves the most wonderful of days.
Hey, thanks for watching the full video. You made a great choice and empowered yourself some more today. If you'd like more, click the videos right here. They're exactly what you need to see next. And if you're new here, hit subscribe and become a part of the Empower community, and tell me what you think about the videos in the comments below. I read all of them and respond daily. Make a comment.